folks. Welcome to the program. This, of course, is Stinchfield, the podcast. So great to be along with you. Who wants to see Trump for a third term? Trump 2028. I do. I would love to see President Trump in as a third-term president. Now, the problem is the Constitution puts some roadblocks up to this. Now, my buddy Steve Bannon says they're working on some ways around it. And there are some ways around it that I've concocted in my own head of how we could make this happen and how we could do it legally, not as President Trump is a dictator. I do think it's a tall order. I want to preface this by saying I don't think the chances are very good of making this happen, specifically because of some of the ways you would need to create this. I'm going to play an interview I had with John Eastman, the constitutional scholar who was so instrumental in President Trump's fight against the election theft in 2020. We're talking to him about the possibilities of this, but there are some ways it can happen. I want to say this, though. I think President Trump is using this idea of a third term as literally just to have fun, as trigger those on the left to let them just flip out. And boy, are they flipping out when it comes to this idea. But when you think about what President Trump has done in just a couple months, you've got to be saying to yourself, if he can do this in 2 months, going on 3, can you imagine what he could do with another 8 years? Because let's face it, we got 4 years left of this. I would love it. So for an exercise of fun, all right, and I know not a lot of conservatives like to have fun, but as an exercise of fun, we'll go through the ways I see President Trump could make it to the Oval Office in it would be 2029 of January 20th. So we'll go through that because actually I don't think it has anything to do with Trump 2028. And I'll explain that here in just a moment. Before I do, I want to tell you about my friends over at Colonial Metals. You know, if you go to Colonial Metals right now, as we see gold continuing to rise, that rise is going to continue to go. Last year, you were probably thinking, oh, gold's making highs. How can it go any higher? This year, you may be thinking the same thing. I don't want you to think about that. In many respects, I don't even want you to think about the price of gold. I want you to think about the gold as a commodity you can hold, as a portfolio protection maneuver, a physical commodity in your possession that no matter what happens, gold is not collapsing. There's a finite number of it in the ground. You got to pull it out. All of this adds value to gold because of the physicalness of it. This is great. My friends at Colonial Metals Group can offer you up to $7,500 in free silver, depending on how much gold you buy. That's a great deal. Take an existing 401k, turn it into a precious metals 401k. All great moves here. freegoldguide.com/Grant. They'll spell out some of these moves you can make. freegoldguide.com/Grant. 800-458-7356 is the number. A lot of gold companies out there. I chose Colonial Metals. They didn't choose me. I chose them. Every week I'm offered, hey, can you bring this gold company on? I love these guys. And there's a reason I like them, because I trust them. Colonial Metals Group. freegoldguide.com/Grant. All right, let's get the party started.
Uncensored and unapologetic. This is Stinchfield. Here's your host, Grant Stinchfield.
All right, so what do you think, folks? Trump 2028. Can he get another term in the White House? This is all the media wants to talk about because, President Trump's a dictator. He's Vladimir Putin. This is just like Venezuela. No, it's not. There are legal pathways that I believe President Trump could do this, though I will say I think it's a very tall order to get there. You would have to have a lot of people with big egos cooperating in order to get him there. And I think that's going to be the main hurdle. Now, you could also change the Constitution, but there's no way the Democrats are going to allow that to happen. So I think changing the Constitution, which literally reads here, okay? No person shall be elected to office of president more than twice. It says nothing about consecutive years, so throw that argument out. Some people are arguing, they meant consecutive. No, they meant consecutive. They would have put consecutive in here. And you see some states actually put in, when it comes to term limits, consecutive term limits, allow you to come back and run again at a later date. This is not the case when it comes to the presidency. I'm very, very confident on that. which is why constitutionally for him to run, because look at the key word here. The key word is no person shall be elected to office of the presidency. Now, how do you take over the office of the presidency from being unelected? Well, there's some ways that you could do that. We'll talk about that here in a second. This was President Trump just, I believe, yesterday.
This other story, I know it's hypothetical right now, but if you were allowed for some reason to run for a third term, is there a thought that the Democrats could try to run Barack Obama against you?
I'd love that.
For his third term?
Boy, I'd love that. That would be a good one. I'd like that. No, people are asking me to run, and there's a whole story about running for a third term. I don't know. I never looked into it. They do say there's a way you can do it, but I don't know about that. But I have not looked into it. I want to do a fantastic job. We have 4 years, just about, almost close to 4 years. Time is flying, but it's still close to 4 years, and we're getting a lot of credit for having done a great job in the first almost 100 days.
I will agree, Mr. President, a fabulous job, which is why I'd be all for a third term of this. I don't even like the idea of term limits for the presidency. I want to vote who I want in there. I love the idea of term limits for Congress. I really do. I think term limits are necessary. I think that's the one place our founding fathers missed the boat on. I don't think they envisioned jet airplanes shuttling people back and forth to Washington, D.C. Yeah, you had to ride a freaking donkey from Vermont or Maine to Washington, D.C. Who was going to do that for 40 years? Nancy Pelosi wasn't going to ride in a horse and buggy from San Francisco for 40, 50 years. So I don't think our founding fathers envisioned that. But now with travel the way it is, you know, you've got these ingrained politicians in Washington that have become part of the deep state. I call them the ruling class of career politicians. I love the idea of term limits for Congress. I would be open to the idea of doing away with term limits for the presidency. You know, the American people want somebody in there, then let them have who they want in there. But our founding fathers were very smart, and they wrote that for a reason, too. And I'm always hesitant also. The other side, the flip of that coin is I'm hesitant to change the Constitution as, well, this was the 22nd Amendment, the 2 terms, but I'm hesitant to change the Constitution as it is, because you know what? I think we're very smart about how our Constitution is written. So how could President Trump get another third term? Here's one way people say, but I don't think this is legitimate. J.D. Vance could run. President Trump would be his vice president, candidate, and they would run as a ticket, Vance-Trump. Once J.D. Vance gets sworn into office, he immediately steps down. President Trump takes over. Would President Trump have been elected to office? Now, remember, the Democrats were going to make the argument that when Joe Biden stepped down, and did, that it was Kamala Harris on the ticket, which is why she got to just take over all of Joe Biden's campaign funds, which I actually, arguing at the time, was not right, that it was not Kamala Harris campaigning and that those were not her funds to take over. Now, if I was going to argue it then, how do I argue it now that Trump is not running or is running and can take over J.D. Vance's funds? It would be a huge legal battle, right? How else could you do it? Well, remember the secession of the presidency. There was a lot of talk about making President Trump Speaker of the House. You don't need to be a member of Congress to be Speaker of the House. So what if you come in and you elect President Trump as Speaker of the House, and then as part of this giant scheme, and that's really what it would be, you're finding loopholes to get President Trump into office. And I've always been a firm believer, anytime you're finding loopholes, you're skirting the boundaries of the law. But then you have the president and the vice president both step down after running, and President Trump take over as third in line of succession. Could that happen? I'm not sure. I'm going to ask John Eastman about that in a moment, but this was President Trump on Air Force One. We'll play more from him.
You said you were not joking about a third term, about possibly wanting a third term. Does that mean you're not planning to leave office on January 20th?
I'm not looking at that, but I'll tell you, I have had more people ask me to have a third term, which is in a way a fourth term because the other election, the 2020 election was totally rigged. So it's sort of a fourth term in a certain way. I just don't want the credit for the second because Biden was so bad. He did such a bad job. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm popular, if you want to know the truth. I think I'm popular because we've done a great job. I think we've had the best almost 100 days of any president. And most people are saying that. And it's an honor. We're bringing back our country. We're respected as a country again. And we're strongly respected. And people are amazed. I was with some very important people today, and they said that they've never seen a turnaround of a country as fast as this.
Which is why many of us would love to see him have a third term. And there are people talking about it because we're so excited about the direction the country is going in. But I'm going to remind you, again, all of these things that I'm spelling out make it a very tall order to get there. The third option, of course, would be changing the Constitution. Now, changing the Constitution, there's no way the Democrats are letting that happen. The sheer number of Democrats you need in Congress and the Senate to make this happen would be unattainable for us. You could call a constitutional convention. That's going to be difficult and tall order as well. As you can imagine, Democrats are freaking out over this. And really, they're trying to weaponize it, which I'm telling you, this is President Trump stoking the flames. I know this man. He loves to trigger the left. And this talk of a third term is really, in my mind, all about triggering the left and having fun with it.
I want to get your reaction to Donald Trump saying that he's not joking about pursuing a third term in office, which the 22nd Amendment, as you know, currently forbids. What would it take?
So first off, that's not what President Trump says. President Trump said he's never entertaining that. He literally has said everything I just played for you, those are the two times he's talked about it. He says, yeah, people are talking about that. I haven't heard about it. I'm not considering that. We're working on things, but that's interesting. A lot of people want me to run. That's not considering it.
For that to happen?
You know, he has shown that he doesn't really care about the Constitution, so we better take his threat of a third term really seriously. We, as Democrats and Republicans, ought to come together, hold him to the Constitution, and make sure this doesn't happen.
You know what that is? That's get ready. If Democrats win the House the next time around, here comes impeachment round 27. And that is what they will do. They will bring the wrath if they win the House, which is why we can't let that happen. This Wisconsin Supreme Court race was disappointing. This Susan Crawford, she's a leftist. Supreme Court, they want to redistrict the lines. That's what the race was about. But, you know, the Democrats in Wisconsin were so smart. You know what the Democrats in Wisconsin made that race about? They made it about abortion. They ran on abortion. They didn't talk about the redistricting of lines. They didn't want to upset Trump supporters. What they wanted to do was talk about abortion, make the whole race about abortion, get any woman that voted for President Trump because she loves his agenda to say, okay, on this, because it's the Supreme Court, I'll vote on this because, you know, they're pro-abortion. Democrats were brilliant. So as we were explaining redistricting and how they're going to gerrymander and upend, and when you're explaining, you're losing. It was not a great issue to run on for the Republicans. It was a legitimate issue, but not a great issue from the messaging standpoint. All right, one more Democrat on just how mad they are about this idea of a third term.
I don't think, by the way, that he's imagining a Democratic election for his third term. He is trying to be Vladimir Putin. And we all know Vladimir Putin is in a democracy.
So President Trump is not imagining an election. He's Vladimir Putin. He's just going to take the Oval Office. I almost said the F word. I literally did. You freaking idiot. President Trump respects the Constitution. Republicans respect the Constitution. No Republicans going to let any president, even President Trump, just declare he's the next president. It's ridiculous. Sit down and shut up.
Runs for election. It's a bogus election. But that's Donald Trump's goal. That's sort of his, the ideal for who he could become, which is to ostensibly have an election, but not really. And that's where he's heading.
No, That's not where he's heading. I'm not going to give that guy any more of a platform. The reason I play it for you is I want you to see it. I want you to see what we're up against. I want you to see the lies they push. This is all about, again, Russia, trying to make President Trump to look like a dictator, trying to make President Trump look like a racist, trying to make President Trump look like an authoritarian. It's all lies. President Trump is bringing America back to the basics. The founders' vision of limited government, smaller, by and for the people. It is literally that easy. So you've heard my take on a third term. I want to get John Eastman's take on a third term. Great constitutional scholar, was there every step of the way, even to the demise of his career. They are waging war on John Eastman when it comes to them trying to disbar him in California for him defending President Trump. That's it. It's despicable what the Democrats are doing there. Before we get to John Eastman, I want to tell you about my friends over at get20now.com. You see where Bitcoin is going. Bitcoin could go, I don't know, it could go to $300,000. Who knows? But if you want to lock into the Bitcoin craze, but you don't want to deal with the wild swings, 80,000 today, 105,000 tomorrow, 90,000, 110,000. If you don't want to deal with those wild swings, you want to lock in to 20% annualized interest and get that interest payment paid monthly, which means direct deposited into your account, cash flow, you have to go to get20now.com. These guys are so great. They've industrialized the Bitcoin mining process. They're buying electricity so cheap. They're selling the Bitcoin the next day. Everything they mine gets sold the next day. They pay you your investment, 20% annualized interest paid monthly. I have invested with them. They have lived up to their promises with me. I see what's going on with the stock market. I'm now considering making another sizable investment with them. Why? Because I love this cash flow. I've owned businesses. I've had the headaches. I don't want them anymore. I don't want to deal with employees anymore. At 56 years old right now, I like the idea of investing with a company I trust and getting this money as basically a dividend. It's an interest payment, annualized, paid monthly, back into my bank account every month. I'll take that all day, every day. Get20now.com. That's get20now.com. The company is NFN8. They're doing such a great job. All right. John Eastman, he came on the Real America's Voice show talking about, a third term for President Trump. I'll play this interview for you, and then we'll talk about it on the flip side.
Thanks, Grant, for having me on, and what an interesting topic to explore with you.
It sure is. And so I should let everybody know you've explored some interesting topics. So I figured, why not bring John Eastman on to explore another one?
So here's, first thing, this could easily be resolved if Congress passes a constitutional amendment allowing for a third term, or allowing for a second term if the terms were not consecutive. Those are both open as a constitutional amendment. And I don't think anybody on either side of the political aisle would dispute that we have the ability as American people to adopt a constitutional amendment. The other options that he could be on as vice president and J.D. Vance step down and make him president, the Constitution requires that the vice president be eligible for the office of president in order to be run for vice president. And I don't think under the current constitutional language, the vice president, as Trump would, as vice president, would be eligible for the office of president because he's term limited out. I don't give any credence to the argument that the Constitution's two-term restriction is 2 consecutive terms. The word consecutive isn't in there. And I also think if he were the Speaker of the House, you'd find a lot of Democrats joining with the concerns that have been raised by folks on the right for a while, that putting the Speaker of the House in as the president in the line of succession is a huge problem constitutionally, separation of powers wise. So that would be an interesting shoe on the other foot type of debate we would have if that were the case. But I think all of this is really the president just getting under the skin of the left and forcing their heads to blow up.
Well, this is what he does very well. So am I right in hearing you that, to just sum it up before I move on to the next topic, you don't think it's possible for this to happen?
Without a constitutional amendment, I don't think it's possible for this to happen. That's right.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Not to say I wouldn't love for it to happen, because I think President Trump is great, and I could use another 4 more years of him. If he's working at the same speed he's working now at, it would be fabulous. I want to bring up Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a Supreme. All right, so that's John Eastman's take on whether or not President Trump could win. And it's interesting because he debunked right there, if you notice, my idea of J.D. Vance running Trump as the VP on the ticket. But the president has to be eligible to be president. And if you've already served 2 terms, you're ineligible. I'm not sure the Speaker of the House argument has been debunked yet. I understand his concerns about separation of powers. And then there's also the idea of changing the Constitution, which could happen, but the chance of that is really probably absolutely slim to none. All right, with that, let me bring up now this situation with Anna Paulina Luna going on in the United States Congress. You've heard about this proposal that Anna Paulina Luna has to make proxy voting legal for men and women who have just had a child. So for parents, for up to 12 weeks after the birth of that child into their family, they could vote remotely. Well, this raises some constitutional concerns because it requires people, the Constitution requires the Congress have a quorum in order to vote. Now, what I want to look at are specifics. If you still have the quorum, could some people that are present, could some people vote remotely? My argument would be maybe, and that is something to explore. But I understand the Speaker of the House's concerns that this could be unconstitutional. And therefore, if there is legislation voted on this way, that if it's challenged in court, the legislation could ultimately be thrown out because members of Congress were not present in an unconstitutional fashion. So I understand why they're trying to stop this. Now, here's the thing. Anna Paulina Luna got signatures. She used Democrats to do it, and she used 8 Republicans. Some good ones, like Tim Burchett, were on her side. I personally don't have a problem if you want to vote remotely if you've just had a child, but I also want to make sure it's constitutionally allowable so we don't make anything worried. Well, leadership, now follow me on this. Leadership put in some rules changes, okay? This was underhanded tactics to make it very difficult for this vote that Anna Paulina Luna had forced to the floor to go through. Because the rules changes were voted down, it shut the Congress down. I think I've explained it right. The long and short of it is infighting between leadership and Anna Paulina Luna, and where many conservatives stand on the side of this, shut the Congress down now for a week. Anna Paulina's bill is still going to have to come up to a vote next week. I think Speaker Johnson needs to get his crew in order, including Anna Paulina Luna. Anna Paulina Luna is so upset about this, she resigns from the Freedom Caucus because most Freedom Caucus members weren't for this. Now, I personally think we have bigger issues to deal with, like the SAVE Act, showing in proving that you're an American citizen before you vote in a federal election, and doing that nationwide, congressionally, through the Senate, onto the president's desk, doing it in a federal manner so it's mandated in every single state. I think that's important. I think limiting district court judges at a federal level to their rulings being just to their district and just to the parties involved in the case is very important. All this now put on hold because of Anna Paulina Luna, who I understand where she's coming from. She just had a baby. This would not affect her now, but it would affect future mothers and fathers. So here's her.
For a while, we've had the majority and we've had the ability to bring legislation to the floor on election integrity and also to call out rogue judges. And yet they chose at this point in time to tie this discharge petition killer to this rule that would also permanently paint me and the members supporting it. And I would like to also share that I'm one of the most conservative members of this body. I'd like to hold up my voting record to anyone else as not just being anti-election integrity, but also enabling a position that I don't typically agree with. That in itself, I would say in this entire process has been the most disappointing, especially from among my party.
So you see what she's saying? The games to sink her bill, and that's what they used. They used legislative gamesmanship, all within the bounds of legality, but underhanded to say the least, to sink her bill. But ultimately they used it. He didn't want it going through the Speaker of the House, so he used it basically to shut it down, but it ultimately ended up shutting the entire House of Representatives down at a time where we cannot afford that. So I'm disappointed in Speaker Johnson's leadership as well through all of this. I will play you a clip from Speaker Johnson in just a moment. But first, folks, let me tell you about my friends over at Energized Health. I feel like I'm in some of the best shape of my life. Why? Because of Energized Health and intercellular hydration. I'm finally getting hydrated at a cellular level, and this is not just about drinking water. This is about the science behind how you hydrate your cells, okay? What does a raisin look like? We all know. What does a grape look like? A raisin is a grape. A raisin is just dehydrated. Now think about your organs looking like a raisin. Not going to be healthy. I'm going to tell you how to get your organs looking like a grape that will have health effects for your entire body, including losing weight like you wouldn't believe. I lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks on the Energized Health system. That was 88 days, and not hard, by the way. Not hard at all. You have my word on that. You can email me and tell me, Grant, you were right, Grant, you were wrong. I guarantee, not hard. EnergizedHealth.com/Grant. That's where I want you to go if you want to take back your life. You will get a mind, body, soul program that will turn your life around. EnergizedHealth.com/Grant. EnergizedHealth.com/Grant. Learn about intercellular hydration. There's a masterclass on there you can take for free. But get with these guys if you want to change your life. EnergizedHealth.com/Grant. All right, Speaker Johnson on all of this controversy surrounding Anna Paulina Luna. Here we go.
Well, it's a very disappointing result on the floor there. A handful of Republicans joined with all the Democrats to take down a rule. That's rarely done. It's very unfortunate in this case. 96% of House Republicans voted against proxy voting because they believe it's unconstitutional and they agree that it would open a Pandora's box. And so that's what we just saw. Let me just make this clear. That rule being brought down means that we can't have any further action on the floor this week. That means we will not be voting on the SAVE Act for election integrity. We will not be voting on the rogue judges who are attacking President Trump's agenda. We will not be taking down these terrible Biden policies with the CRA votes. All that was just wiped off the table. It's very unfortunate. We'll regroup and come back, and we'll have to do this again.
Mr. Speaker, were you asking for too much? Thank you.
All right, so the problem is he plays a role in all of this. Now, the proxy voting, you could have let Anna Paulina's vote go through on this. It would have to go through the Senate, and you get support from your Republican colleagues in the Senate. If it passes the Senate, you still have the President of the United States who could veto it. If the president thinks it's not constitutional, the president could have vetoed it. Have the conversations, behind the scenes with Donald Trump. He doesn't need to come out and say what he's going to do. Let it go through the process. The reality is Anna Paulina Luna got the number of signatures she needed to bring it to a vote. I believe Speaker Johnson used an underhanded tactic to kill it. But in the process, what he ended up doing was killing all legislation for the week. He'll blame the Republicans that sided with Democrats on this. I blame the whole system. And I blame Speaker Johnson for once again not having his entire caucus in lockstep. And that's what we need right now. This battle we are waging right now. I would say this to Anna Paulina Luna. I don't mind your bill. If you can prove to me it's constitutional, I'm okay with it. But it's not the battle we need to be fighting right now, and you can't let that battle sink the really important battles. Let's take that up after we get through some of these very, very important battles. So this has been a progression of my thinking on this as I try to figure it out, because it's a really, really complicated issue, as everything they do in Washington. Sometimes they overcomplicate it, and they do it for a reason to trick you as to not know who to blame. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Blame them all. Blame Anna Paulina Luna, blame Speaker Johnson, blame the process. Let's focus on what we need to be focused on, and that's reining in these judges. That's fair elections. That's solidifying the Trump agenda into legislation so we don't have to worry about the judges. All of it is what needs to happen, and it needs to happen at a very rapid pace. We have 2 years because there are no guarantees coming up this next election. Now, one of the reasons why we know there's no guarantees is because we got guys like Spartacus, Cory Booker. First off, I'm going to put him up here before I play it, if I'm going to pause it, okay? Look at his eyes. Look at his eyes. I think the man's on something. So I think he went for like 25 hours or something. He set the record. He beat Strom Thurmond's record, but it wasn't a filibuster. It was a filibuster to nothing, okay? So Cory Booker, with his wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, cocaine-looking smile and eyeballs. Was he on cocaine? I don't know. Let's hope not. No evidence of that other than the eyes wide open. He blocked nothing. When I tell you that Spartacus is a stuntman, he is a political stuntman. Every day he's pulling a political stunt. Why? Because he wants to run for presidency. He wants to be president. This is his first step in getting Democrat support.
To call to the conscience of this nation, to say, I will not stand for another American to lose their health care for a billionaire. I will not stand for another veteran who's dedicated to stopping the suicide of other veterans to lose their job. I won't stand for the air quality in my community to be made worse because they're letting polluters pollute more. I won't stand for the collective assaults on the Constitution by a man who even the highest judge in our land, a Republican-appointed judge, said stop threatening and bullying other branches of government.
All right, is he on Adderall? Because 25 hours, no going to the bathroom, standing on your feet the whole time, you can't take a rest. I'll tell you, it's an impressive feat. I don't think I could have done it. And the guy doesn't even look like he's in that good of shape. There was a time he was in good shape. It doesn't look like he's in that good of shape now. He spewed nonsense and lies for 25 hours. I thought the Democrats were good liars. This proved to me they're great liars. You're capable of standing for 25 hours spewing nonsense.
When is it going to be enough? My voice is inadequate. My efforts today are inadequate to stop what they're trying to do. But we, the people, are powerful. We are strong. We have changed history. We have bent the arc of the moral universe. And now is that moral moment again. It's the moral moment again. God bless America. We need you now. God bless America. If you love her, if you love your neighbor, if you love this country, show your love. Stop them from doing what they're trying to do for almost 20 hours. We have laid out what they're trying to do. 20 hours. I want to stand more, and I will, but I'm...
Oh, God. 20 hours. Spewing that. I mean, you got to admit, it is a feat. Do I dare play a little bit more of him? I don't know.
To call to the conscience of this nation, to say I will not stand for another American to lose their health care for $1 billion.
Oh, it's the same one. It was the same one. So we'll finish out this.
Begging people, don't let this be another normal day in America. Please, God, don't let them take Medicaid away.
Who's taking Medicaid away from anybody? Would someone please explain this to me? Nobody's taking Medicare or Medicaid away from anybody. President Trump has said it over and over again. Now, here's the reality. When you look at Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, something's got to be done. It will sink this country. The savings that Elon's finding is not going to make up for our deficit right there on that front. But no Republican has the cojones to take it on because we'll lose elections. So quite frankly, I'm thinking maybe they're right. But what do we do? How do we've got to find, there's two ways to do it. You find savings someplace else, which is what Elon's doing, or you raise revenue someplace else. Typically, the way our federal government raised revenue was they raised taxes. That's a no-go for me, okay? And it's a no-go for President Trump. We need to solidify the Trump tax cuts into place and give people some other relief. Now, I believe by giving tax cuts, you'll spur more revenue in, more taxpayers. You'll get more revenue that way. How's the other way that you generate revenue for a country? Tariffs. Now do you see where President Trump is going? Tariffs. Tariffs will raise revenue. We're going to talk about tariffs a little bit later in this program. But tariffs are a way to raise revenue. We can't continue to go down this path. That's not going to work. When I tell you $36 trillion in debt, what goes through your mind? I'll bet you that many of you are like, you tune it out. 36 trillion is such a big number, it's unfathomable of how big it is. Let me give you one example. For $1 billion. Now, $1 billion, okay? You have 1,000 billion in just 1 trillion. $1 billion. If you are a billionaire and you make a donation of $1 million to your college that you went to, that's the equivalent of somebody with $100,000 giving $100 to his school. If you have $1 billion, $1 million is nothing. Now imagine $1 trillion, how much a million is. Nothing. Now, would you like to have $1 million? Of course. Now imagine $36 trillion. Again, I can't begin to wrap my head around that number. And that is our debt. Now, our deficit is $2 trillion. Elon Musk says he's on the way to finding the $2 trillion and cutting out waste to end up balancing our budget. And he's on the way. Just yesterday, the Labor Department said $1.4 billion they found in COVID relief money that was sitting someplace, not given out. They're going to give back to the American taxpayer, or at least back to the government to use. $1.4 billion. Again, that's an insane number. Thank you for finding it. Let's talk about deportations here in just a moment. But before I do, my friends over at Patriot Mobile are so great. They've been supporting me for so long. I'm going to ask you to support them. And it's not even going to be a sacrifice. You're going to save money doing it. You're going to have peace of mind doing it. You know that when you pay your cell phone bill, when you make a phone call, portion of that money is going to go to support a conservative agenda. Whether it's the NRA, whether it's fighting against Planned Parenthood, whether it's supporting shows and programs like this that push our message, whether it's supporting nonprofits like Folds of Honor. This is what Patriot Mobile does. They're America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. If you're with the other 3 cell phone companies, you're aiding and abetting the left. AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile fund left-wing causes. It's not a secret. They'll tell you that they won't use that terminology, but they do. So you being with them is damaging the country. You being with Patriot Mobile is pushing the country in the right direction, at least in a small way. And every small way helps. 972-PATRIOT is the number, 972-PATRIOT. You get with them today, use the promo code GRANT. You'll get a free month's service. PatriotMobile.com/Grant. PatriotMobile.com/Grant. Love these guys. They've been great to me. I've been with them for years now. And oh, by the way, 100% U.S.-based customer service. They're good, too. PatriotMobile.com/Grant. 972-PATRIOT. Tell them Grant Stinchfield sent you. All right. Let's talk about some of these deportations because they are making news like you wouldn't believe. This idea, I don't know if you heard about this story. The Atlantic wrote that a Maryland dad had been deported to El Salvador based on a clerical error. You mean a soccer dad was deported based on a clerical error? Frank Johnson? No. An MS-13 gang member who happens to be a dad that happened to be captured in Maryland was deported to El Salvador. Yes, there was a clerical error, but yes, he's also an MS-13 gang member. Listen to Caroline Levitt answer this.
The error that you are referring to was a clerical error. It was an administrative error. The administration maintains the position that this individual who was deported to El Salvador and will not be returning to our country was a member of the brutal and vicious MS-13 gang. That is fact number one. Fact number two, we also have credible intelligence proving that this individual was involved in human trafficking. And fact number three, this individual was a member, actually a leader of the brutal MS MS-13 gang, which this president has designated as a foreign terrorist organization. Fact number 4 is that foreign terrorists do not have legal protections in the United States of America anymore, and it is within the president's executive authority and power to deport these heinous individuals from American communities. It is a promise he campaigned on. It is a promise he is keeping. And every single person in this room should be grateful for that, considering especially MS-13 is very prevalent and prominent here in the District of Columbia, in Maryland, and in Virginia. And the president, the attorney general, everyone who has been involved in these operations is focused on eradicating these criminals and terrorists from our communities.
The vice president said he was a convicted member of MS-13. What evidence is there to back that up?
There's a lot of evidence, and the Department of Homeland Security and ICE have that evidence, and I saw it this morning.
There you go. Boy, she is great. You know, I didn't know she was going to be as good as she is, but she has turned out to be great at 20-something years old. Fabulous press secretary. One of the best. Though President Trump has had some good ones along the way. He really has, when you think about it. Sarah Huckabee Sanders and my buddy Spicer. You got Caroline Leavitt. I mean, it's been great. All right, so he's a convicted MS-13 gang member. He gets deported to El Salvador. Now, they go crazy that he didn't get his due process. It doesn't matter whether he was a convicted MS-13 gang member or not. If he was here illegally, he doesn't have a right to see a judge. The president of the United States, who controls our borders, has a right to deport him anyone he wants if you're not here legally. Now, if you have papers, if you were given a visa, if you're in the process of getting a citizenship, if you're a legal permanent resident, you have some protections to see a court. Sneaking into the country, you do not have protections.
You can get classified by simply having certain symptoms.
So this is the question about how they're so upset that are we just deporting people based on tattoos? You have face tattoos, you're going to end up in El Salvador on a plane flight there. I want you to listen to how Caroline Leavitt responds.
In your tattoos and wearing certain streetwear brands, that alone is enough to get someone classified as TDA and sent to El Salvador.
That's not true, actually, Andrew.
According to this document, it is.
No, according to the Department of Homeland Security and the agents, have you talked to the agents who have been putting their lives on the line to detain these foreign terrorists who have been terrorizing our communities? TDA is a vicious gang that has taken the lives of American women. And our agents on the front lines take deporting these people with the utmost seriousness, and there is a litany of criteria that they use to ensure that these individuals qualify as foreign terrorists and to ensure that they qualify for deportation. And the president made it incredibly clear to the American public that there would be a mass deportation campaign of not just foreign terrorists, but also illegal criminal aliens who have been wreaking havoc on American communities. And shame on you and shame on the mainstream media for trying to cover for these individuals who have. This is a vicious gang, Andrew. This is a vicious gang that has taken the lives of American women.
The government filed in court, which says all.
And you said yourself there are 8 criteria on that document.
They need 8 points.
And you are questioning the credibility of these agents who are putting their life on the line to protect your life and the life of everybody in this group and everybody across the country. And their credibility should be questioned. They finally have a president who is allowing them to
do their job. I told you she's great. She's phenomenal. Now, you want to see who's not great? The Democrats have such a poor bench. We have some really dumb members of Congress, we being the United States, them being Democrats. Democrats may have some of the dumbest members of Congress. Really. Even many of their high-profile members, I think, are flat out stupid, okay? But there may be none dumber than Hank Johnson, all right? This is the congressman. I believe he's from Georgia. I'm going to play a little trip down memory lane for him, but I want you to hear him drone on about why he's so concerned about President Trump's mass deportations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for your appearance today. Special shout out to former Speaker Newt Gingrich from the great state of Georgia. Professor Gingrich, good to see you. Of the many troubling actions the Trump administration has taken in its first 71 days, Among the most damaging are his authoritarian, dictatorial, and unprecedented use of presidential power to instill fear, intimidate, exact revenge against, and punish those who dare to stand up to him and hold him accountable to the laws of our nation. A climate of fear and trepidation has descended upon the nation. The people of America are more afraid today for our democracy and for their personal safety than ever in our lifetimes.
The polling just does not show that. In fact, the polling shows that people are feeling more safe than ever before. Overwhelmingly, Americans are supporting his deportation plans. He'll bring up this idea of college students being scooped off the streets. These are college students that were literally planning anti-Israel, pro-Hamas rallies. Hamas, a terrorist organization, planning Hamas rallies, terrorizing Israeli and Jewish students as they're walking to class on campuses like Columbia University, Tufts University, and others. By and large, the American people support what President Trump is doing in a very, very big way. This is CNN talking about where President Trump is with approvals and where Democrats are. You want to see where Democrats are, Hank Johnson? You want to see where you are?
Holy Toledo. Voters' views of the Democrats in Congress among all voters disapprove 68%. And look at the approved number, just 21. Holy Toledo. Voters' views of the Democrats in Congress among all voters disapprove 68%. And look at the approved number, just 21%, even lower than the Democratic Party at large. This is the lowest on record for Democrats, according to Quinnipiac University polling. You think these numbers are bad? Let's go to this side of the screen. We'll look how Democratic voters feel. Get this. The plurality of Democratic voters disapprove of Democrats in Congress at 49%, and just 40% approve.
You see what's happening? More Democrats disapprove of their own party than Democrats do. When it comes to all voters, 70%, nearly 68, close to 70% disapprove of the Democrat Party. And you got Hank Johnson here spouting off nonsense.
College students have disappeared off the streets paramilitary style by plainclothes, mask-wearing individuals and held incognito for days before they are discovered thousands of miles away in some private for-profit ICE detention facility. Why? For exercising their free speech First Amendment rights.
I'm going to ask you, you freaking idiot, Hank Johnson. Is it exercising your free speech First Amendment right to terrorize and take over campuses across, and they're takeovers, okay? This is not just a protest. These are takeovers. They instill fear into these Jewish students. That's not good. When you start supporting, openly supporting, and rooting for the success of a terrorist organization that wants to kill Americans, that is not your First Amendment. And by the way, they don't have the rights American citizens do. They're here on visas. If they decide, or the government decides that they're being troublemakers here on visas, they don't have the same rights that an American citizen has to our First Amendment rights. They can be deported. Whether you like it or not, that is an absolute fact.
Universities, bastions of free thought, have been punished for having the wrong ideology by having their federal funding revoked. And major law firms that dared to have brought cases against...
Look, the universities are having their funding revoked or because they're engaging in anti-American behavior. So taxpayer dollars, we don't want it going to anti-American, anti-freedom behavior. And we certainly don't want it going to the radical left to push a radical ideology. That's not what taxpayer money should be used for. And that's exactly what it is being used for. So who is Hank Johnson? Do you remember this interaction?
No, this is a island that at its widest level is 12 miles from shore to shore.
He's talking about Guam now, okay? And he's talking to one of our top-ranking military members. This goes back many years, but this shows you how dumb this guy is. Listen closely.
and at its smallest level or smallest location, it's 7 miles between one shore and the other. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact dimensions, but to your point, sir, I think Guam is a small island.
Very small island, and about 24 miles, if I recall, long. So 24 miles long, about.
So Guam's a small island, man. We got a big military base there, naval base on Guam, but it's small. So he's making his point. It's a small island. Mr. Sharpest attack here.
About 7 miles wide at the least widest place on the island, and about 12 miles wide on the widest part of the island. And I don't know how many square miles that is. Do you happen to know?
I don't have that figure with me, sir. I can certainly supply it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, my fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate that.
He thinks Guam is going to capsize, as he says, because we're building up the naval base and military presence on Guam. So he's afraid it's going to tip over. And he even does the physical. I mean, it's really pretty amazing. Watch it again.
Become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate that. The Guam population, I think, currently about 175,000, and again, with 8,000 Marines and their families, it's an addition of about 25,000 more into the population.
And also things like the environment, the sensitive areas of the environment, coral reefs and those kinds of things. And I know that, lots of people don't like to think about that, but, we didn't think about global warming either. And now we do have to think about it. And so I'm concerned from an environmental standpoint whether or not Guam is the best place to do this relocation, but it's actually the only place. Is that correct?
This is the best place. This is the farthest west U.S. territory that we own. And, this is part of our nation. And in readdressing the forward presence and posture importance to Pacific Command, Guam is vital to this decision.
Oh, boy. So Hank Johnson's afraid that Guam's going to capsize, that the extra 25,000 people is going to be devastating to the island that even he admits was 20 miles wide, 20 miles long and 12 miles wide. It's going to capsize. But God forbid the worst thing is the coral reefs, because you're going to have these destroyers and aircraft carriers just running ramshot over the coral reefs. What a freaking idiot. And they wonder why this is the case.
Horrible, horrible, horrible. Oh, my goodness gracious, you just can't get worse than these numbers.
And this is the number right here really driving all of this. If Democrats have turned, if Democratic voters have turned on Democrats in Congress and the Democratic Party, that's what puts the numbers at historic lows. What is it they want to be seeing, these voters?
What is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. They don't like what's coming out of some of those Senate Democrats like Chuck Schumer, because take a look at the direction of the party. Democratic voters on Democrats in Congress doing too little to oppose Donald Trump. Look at this, 77%. Should stay principled, even if it means nothing gets done in Washington, D.C. 65%. And this 65% is such a difference from where we were in 2017 at this point, when just 33% of Democrats say they should stay principled, compared to 59% who said they want to compromise. Democrats do not want compromise at this point. They want a fighter. They want to go into the ring like Muhammad Ali did against Sonny Liston. They want to take down the Republicans. They do not want this compromise anymore. They want to be more like Republicans, get up to that stage and fight. And right now they feel like their leaders in Congress are simply put not doing so. And that is why their approval rating for congressional Democrats is at an all-time low, even among Democrats with more disapproving than approving.
See, I'd actually disagree with his assessment there. I think the reason it's disapproving is because they see the cuts. Everyday average Democrats, not the lunatics you see protesting and destroying Teslas, but the average everyday Democrat sees, you know what, we spend $1 million on transgender mice. Like, I don't think I want to do that. We spend $10 million on why mothballs don't smell good in your clothes. I don't want to do that. I made that one up, but I bet we're studying it. We have lots that I could make up that probably end up being true. And people don't want to spend money on it. I think that's why Democrat approval rating right now is at an all-time low. I mean, you even have Bill Maher coming out and in many respects defending Elon and the cuts. Specifically, remember we talked about this on the podcast last week. NPR, PBS. Why is public money going to these entities where you have private documentary filmmakers that are making content for there? You have Sesame Street and the other, they're private for-profit production companies that are making millions of dollars off Sesame Street. You have advertisers literally advertising on PBS and NPR, and we need taxpayer dollars. The days of needing NPR and PBS are gone. We have now Discovery Channel and TLC and the History Channel and the Military Channel and all of these things where documentaries can be seen. We didn't have that before. I get why we needed PBS and NPR. We don't need it now. They're of a bygone era. And Bill freaking Maher sees it.
The heads of NPR and PBS testified before Congress this week amid accusations of liberal bias. Should the government continue to send taxpayer dollars to public broadcasters? Well, a little background here. I mean, they've been after them the Republicans have wanted to get rid of PBS for as long as I can remember. This crowd will probably do it. I mean, I also read my namesake, Catherine Maher, was head of NPR, and, you know, she said, we're completely unbiased. Give me a break, lady. I mean, they're crazy far left. So, I mean, I think we're past the age, really, where the government, first of all, why do we need to subsidize? Why can't we have outlets like this? And we're so polarized. These outlets became popular at a time when Republicans and Democrats didn't hate each other and weren't at each other's throats and didn't think each other was an existential threat. In that world, you can't have places like this, I think, anymore. They have to be private.
They have to be private. God bless you, Bill Maher. Why don't you just switch parties? Because you still have some radical leftist thoughts. That's why. But I'm open to them because you're willing to have a discussion in a normal way without freaking out. This guy's been a powerful voice for conservatives, truthfully. Now, he supports some wacky things. He does. But on common sense items like cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, we heard him talk about he just wants to get his roof replaced. And it's 2-year permit process in California to get his roof replaced. He wants to fireproof it. Can't get it done. That's leftist leadership that he's calling out, that we've been calling out for decades. So good job, Bill Maher. Folks, before I leave you, do you have one of these? These are the wellness company's medical emergency kits. Prescription medications in here, including ivermectin. You know, I just saw an article. Ivermectin is now being dubbed the miracle drug. It has properties that is now fighting cancer. Ivermectin will kick your COVID in the ass, by the way. And it's in this kit. Still hard to get in some places. The FDA now just came out and said, you know what? Oh, by the way, the ivermectin, it's approved for COVID. When I lost my TikTok account because of saying that. These kits are great. If you want to be prepared for any kind of an emergency, you've got to have prescription medications on hand. Here's how you get them. twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT for up to 10% off. I promise you, you won't regret it. There's also the Giant Field kit. I've told you about it. It's waterproof. EpiPen in here, even more prescription medications, steroids, you name it. That's a great kit. as well. twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us today. GrantStinchfield.com. That's the website, GrantStinchfield.com. Stinchfield 1776 on all the social media platforms. I will see you on the Real America's Voice show tonight. What are we? 7 p.m. Eastern time on Real America's Voice. We're going to have a big show. Hey, this economy collapsing nonsense, we're going to blow the lid off of why that's all complete and utter nonsense, okay? Do not believe the sky is falling narrative from those on the left. That on Stinchfield on Real America's Voice tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Again, sign up for the email list on the website right there, GrantStinchfield.com. You know I love you. Stinchfield's Army rolls. We'll see you then.